is the Orange Zone, sponsored by Apex Entertainment.
What's up, everyone? Welcome in to another episode of the Orange Zone podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, and we are so happy to have you back here with us. We have some football news, a little bit of basketball news mixed in there. It's the dead season, but it's feeling quite alive, isn't it?
Quite alive.
I'll say. So we're going to start with the fact that Syracuse football landed its first five-star commitment in over 2 decades. Calvin Russell, a wide receiver in the class of 2026, originally from Florida. Fran Brown got it, you guys. It's another step in the right direction for the Syracuse football program, and a big one.
Yes, Calvin Russell chose the orange on the weekend. I believe it was Saturday night it was a commitment party. It was a birthday party. It was sort of a joint thing. It was a party down in Miami. But the interesting part of that, at least to me, was he had Darius Johnson. Darius Booby is his nickname, Johnson, who is also joining Syracuse football on the football team. There with him, and they were teammates in high school at this high school in Florida in the Miami region. They won a state championship together. So they were there together, and they were also alongside another commit, Darius Hughes, I believe, who is currently committed to Florida State, but Syracuse is looking to flip him as well. So you know what they say, once you get one 5-star, that's how you get more 5 stars. And don't think that Fran Brown doesn't know that.
5 stars lead to more 5 stars. Mind you, Russell chose Syracuse over finalists Michigan, Florida State, and Oregon. He is 6'6", 190 pounds. And ultimately, he said something that I think is worth a beat, that was interesting, that we should discuss. He told On3 Sports, well-known recruiting site, that does a great job, really, that he had really made this decision a couple days prior to the announcement. It was set in stone. He also said, my recruitment is closed, and not everybody makes such a bold statement. Things are so in flux in the recruiting world. There are times where I think recruits want to see, is a better offer going to pop up at some point. He said, my recruitment is closed.
Yeah.
And of course, he cited Fran Brown as the reason why. That means something.
Totally. He's 2026. You always, of course, need to see them officially put pen to paper on National Early Signing Day, National Signing Day in the fall. But I agree that it's a great sign to hear him say that, because if you don't really get that reaffirmment, these recruits can kind of flip-flop. We see recruits flip all the time. Fran Brown is sometimes facilitating some of those flips the other way to Syracuse. So to see him reaffirm it was great. Like you said, there was his final 4 were Michigan, Florida State, Oregon. There was a delay at this party. He was supposed to come out about an hour before he actually came out. He was supposed to come out around 9 o'clock, ends up coming out around 10 o'clock to announce the commitment. And some people were speculating, is it a late flip? Is he still talking to someone? We haven't gotten any of those things confirmed. People were sort of speculating that it came down to Michigan and Syracuse for the final 2. But Fran Brown, man, On3 had a quote from, I believe, an ACC scout that this move really put the ACC on notice, and as it should, right? Syracuse has not had a 5-star commitment in, like you said, 20 years, over 20 years, 2 decades, but they've only had 3. Ever. Both of those coming around the 2000, 2001, 2002 timeframe. So this is unprecedented in terms of Syracuse football recent recruiting. And I think it's a great sign in Florida, right? I think Syracuse has made such inroads in the state of Florida. If you're Syracuse, you have to win the Northeast. We've talked about that extensively. You have to focus on where your resources are and where your homegrown players might come from. But Syracuse under Fran Brown and with Tommy Caporale, who's now the GM as well, who previously was the director of Florida recruiting for SU, has made such inroads in Florida, and to me, that's a great sign. They are getting kids now who are looking at Florida State. That's a school in the state they grew up, Miami, that sort of thing. So to see it is really great. This kid, obviously super athletic, super talented, and multifaceted. He wants to play basketball at Syracuse also.
I mean, that alone, you're getting a 2-for-1 deal, and I feel like not enough people are talking about that. He's not just like a basketball player. He was a really good basketball player too. He just happens to be a better football player. I agree. The 5-star thing sends a statement. I was even talking to a national analyst from 24/7 Sports recently, maybe a week ago, who said that in South Florida, Fran Brown is a big name. Like, there is not a recruit that he's talking to in South Florida who is not at least discussing Fran Brown. The name is continuing to appear. He's everywhere. And it's funny because this is also just me speculating, and I like to say we don't like to speculate on this podcast, but like, why am I envisioning at 9 o'clock at this party, Fran Brown on the line with Russell, like, listen, man, you got to come to Syracuse. Like,
Dart.
No, exactly. I feel like he the fact that Russell would say that kind of a statement that his recruitment is closed signifies to me that more is happening on these recruiting visits than we possibly even know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just a matter of the showy stuff and the pictures. Fran Brown is doing things on these visits that are, I think, proving to recruits and to 5-stars that they may potentially have the rest of their lives set up by going to Syracuse. It's not just a matter of the football at this point. There's more that Syracuse is offering. It's not just about the money at this point. There are other schools that have more money to offer than the Orange. It's the fact that he's promising you're going to get a job after you graduate within 60 days, the financial literacy. All of these things collectively are forming this package that a lot of recruits are feeling really inclined and feeling really good about. So to me, that's the positive. It's not just the fact that Syracuse got a 5-star. It's the fact that a 5-star felt so committed to the point where he would say, my recruitment is closed. That could end up not being true, but for now it is. And I think we see a message that we've seen over and over again, time and time again, which is that Fran Brown is connecting with these recruits on a really deep level.
Yeah, and forget about 5-star. I mean, this kid was a top 5 wide receiver in the 2026 class. And in the ESPN top 300, I mean, he's a top 30 player in the class, top 28 ranked player. Like, this is a kid that every school in the country wanted at one point. He obviously had a ton of offers, came down to those 4. In case you were curious, like I said, he's the 3rd 5-star to ever pick Syracuse. The other 2 were wide receiver Johnny Morant in 2000 and quarterback Cecil Howard in 2001. Obviously, all this recruiting stuff, right? Some of them pan out, some of these really high-ranked recruits, and some of them just don't. That's sort of, I guess, the catch-22 of all these recruiting rankings and whatnot. But to see it is super exciting, and of course, I think it makes a huge statement within the ACC and within the class of 2026. It also skyrocketed, if you are a fan of following these things, Syracuse's national rankings for the class of 2026. The overall ranking of the class, now at 24/7 Sports, is up to top 20 nationally. So something to be said for that as well.
And you're right to say that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Johnny Moran, who you mentioned, had a good long Syracuse career here. The quarterback who you mentioned transferred out within the first year. It's not to say that because they land a 5-star that 5-star is going to then go on and become an amazing football player at the college level. You don't know everything about a player when they're at the high school level. That being said, 5-stars, and I know that certain sites do it differently, but according to the 24/7 Sports analysts, they're ranking, I think, in the realm of like 30 to 32 5-stars across the country. That's it, at all positions.
Yeah.
So I think that goes to show you just how high that value is to these people who are following it and going to games and watching these players all the time. And he told me that they only rate somebody as a 5-star who they truly believe in their mind would be a first-round draft pick. I don't know exactly how you see that when a kid is only like 18, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure it doesn't always pan out that way, but that's still some pretty high praise. So again, it's just another, I think, statement, Kyle McCord style and level statement that Syracuse is in a different place than they used to be.
Kyle McCord quote tweeted it, by the way, the announcement on Twitter, and he said, "Let Fran cook."
Yeah, let Fran cook. I totally agree. Listen, I think it was a statement move. Whatever Russell actually ends up doing remains to be seen. But just know that Syracuse could be getting a 2-for-1 deal next year. And hey, he's a wide receiver and the team really needed that.
And honestly, bigger picture, if you're a Syracuse fan and you look at the wide receiver core, I think the wide receiver core is a group that could be really talented this year, young talent, and to add another guy to that in 2026, you have to be really excited about that. Moving over to talking about some recruits that don't always pan out.
That's right. KingJoseph Edwards is transferring out of the program, according to a report. He was with the team for 1 season. He saw minimal playing time, but made the most of his moments. Had a couple of really great sacks, had a couple of bright spots where people thought, wow, this guy with his size and his talent is someone who could really be a competitor at Syracuse. Ultimately, he decided it wasn't the right fit.
Yeah, this was one of those commits when Fran Brown first got here in December of 2023. KingJoseph was a 4-star at the time out of high school, out of Georgia, where he's from. That was a really big deal. This was one of the first ones. If you're an SU fan, I know you remember because the excitement was so high. Fran Brown had taken the job just a few weeks prior, and Syracuse had already cracked KingJoseph's top 3. He had this whole commitment party, was a whole thing, and he chose SU, and he obviously cited Fran as the reason. Unfortunately, his redshirt year last year, he played in just enough games. I believe it's 5 games to preserve his redshirt. The big moment on the field at Syracuse was really that Holy Cross game. When they started blowing out Holy Cross last year, they put in, they subbed out some starters essentially, and KingJoseph came in and had 3 sacks and a quarterback hurry. That was a real flash of his potential, and I think all Syracuse fans were really excited to see that sort of earlier in the season last year. He didn't see much playing time after that, whether that's to preserve his red shirt or not. He played a little bit in the bowl game. Syracuse last year, obviously at the edge position, really relied on Fidel Diggs, who is now moving on to the NFL, was drafted this year. So yeah, KingJoseph, it didn't pan out. I hesitate to say that I'm surprised because I think that all of the signs recently with him were pointing in this direction, right? Fran Brown saying after the spring game that he was, quote, defiant sometimes. That is how he described KingJoseph. He said that he was in his doghouse. But he did say after the spring game that he had been improving in the past couple of weeks throughout the spring, and that he was working on some stuff in the classroom, some stuff off the field. That was not the first time that Fran had said that. He had said that a few times last year, and Elijah Robinson, defensive coordinator, had also said that they were looking for some more, essentially, maturity from KingJoseph to get him that playing time. And I think that's emblematic of Fran Brown as a whole, right? You might be the kid with the most raw talent in the room, but that doesn't mean you're the kid that's going to play if you don't have all the off-the-field maturity stuff swept up.
And isn't that great in a way? Don't you just love that, honestly?
Yes, I do.
Like, I really find that to be so refreshing. Fran Brown's tolerance for bullshit is at a 0.
Zilch.
Zilch. I mean, Zippo.
Zilcho.
That word. I think that even that sends a really strong message and aligns with the rest of his personality in saying football is not the most important thing here. Of course he wants to win games. Of course he has these big goals, but he also wants you to be a student first. That's why he's doing class checks. That's why there's videos that circulate of him sitting in the first row of an econ class. He's everywhere. I would not want to defy Fran Brown, let me just say. And we have no idea why he said that. We don't know exactly what was going on behind the scenes. But I think, again, it just sends a strong message that, hey, if you are not aligning with this, it may not work out here for you. I should go on the record and say that Edwards said this was his decision. He also sent out sort of a cryptic tweet that said, I'm going to explain more about this later. There were a couple of reasons why I transferred. I'm interested to see when that comes out, what's going to be said. But honestly, I still sit here and think that maybe there was perhaps some encouragement there if things weren't going the way that Fran Brown wanted.
Well, it's also worth mentioning that this transfer portal window that's now open until the beginning of August, your school has to place you there. You can't just open, like, your school has to facilitate you entering your name in the portal. I hesitate to use the terms that, like, Syracuse showed him the door because I'm not exactly sure, right? He's saying it's his decision, but it definitely could have been something mutual if there were, as it seems, some off-the-field issues. If I play for Fran Brown, all I'm going to say is I don't want him using the term defiant to talk about me.
And honestly, there's something to be said for the fact that like KingJoseph Edwards must have some real raw talent and potential, because the whole way through, Fran Brown would be saying like amazing things about him and what he was doing on the field and his parents and the genetics and how fantastic he was. So somebody else out there in the football world is going to be getting a really high level player. And ultimately we just wish him the best. I do think it's also worth mentioning that, while he was described in that way by Fran Brown, this was also somebody who had actually hosted several community events, somebody who seemed to care about Syracuse. So I think as Syracuse fans and just, fans in general, you just root for all the players to have success wherever they end up.
Yeah, definitely. He focused a lot on the Syracuse community, hosting some, community donation things at the elementary school and whatnot. And he did that right from the start. He did that right when he got here as a recruit. Even in January of 2024, he had just moved in and he was already hosting some of those community events with his mom. So I think SU fans loved him for that, right? To see that dedication to the local community right away. And hopefully he does that wherever else he goes. I also think it's worth a mention that, for all this speculation, I mean, the kid's from Georgia. Sometimes there is just homesickness at play here, right? Wanting to play a little closer to home. If you're close with your mom growing up, if you're close with your family growing up, maybe you just want to play somewhere that's a little closer to your home base. So he does leave a rather sizable gap on the field in terms of that edge rusher position in the defensive end room. But we're going to see how Syracuse, sort of tries to fill that. I know we saw David I never know how to say his David
I
O.
don't, yeah,
David O.
David O.
Really made a statement in sort of the bowl game and appears to be much more of a player in 2025. So I have no doubt that Fran Brown will kind of bridge that gap. I think talent-wise, it's a loss, but if you weren't fitting with all the other sort of characteristics and culture points of the team, then, you know, how much of a loss is it?
That's interesting. One other thing that I wanted to mention, this is us moving on to a different topic now, but just to say it, Syracuse men's basketball is having sort of this like bombshell NIL event tonight. We're filming this on a Tuesday. Just thought we'd put you guys on blast about it because Ashley is going to be there. So we'll be showing you whatever content we do receive from this event. It is called the Summer Slam. It is taking place in Skinny Atlas from 5 to 9:30 tonight. This event includes, but is not limited to, an intimate slam dunk and three-point contest. Not sure why they used the word intimate, but just felt like that was important to say. Featuring the stars of the Syracuse men's basketball for an incredible cause. Judged by NBA slam dunk champions, which is awesome, with Syracuse Hall of Famer and icon Jim Boeheim, so he'll be there. Meet head coach Adrian Autry and our top 10 national recruiting class, including, I am sure, Kyan Anthony, Sadiq White, etc. The future of Syracuse basketball on full display. And they also have fireworks. They have some food, live DJ, the whole 9 yards. They're really going all out. And I think just based on everything that we discussed with the Syracuse men's basketball team last year, how money was a big issue.
Yeah.
Can't deny that changes are being made when you see something like that.
It is really encouraging to see them host. I mean, this seems like something that Syracuse football has done, right?
Yep.
So to see this high caliber level event be hosted in July by them is really encouraging. I know, of course, from a logistical standpoint, everybody is eager to hear from Kyan Anthony, but even guys who stayed, right? JJ, Donnie. The summer basketball really goes through a dead period, sort of unlike football, even because football, you got the spring game, you got spring practices. So to hear from Autry and to hear from some of the returning guys and some of the new guys in July is an exciting opportunity. And we're going to get down there and see what we can find.
Big deal. Everybody, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much to Apex Entertainment, our lovely sponsor. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, and we will see you back here next week with more from the basketball NIL event. Thanks for joining us.